Greetings. Strong beginning to all you folks out there. That's supposed to be a better replacement for weekend, like understand is for understand. But at any rate, this is the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer. The acronym for the program is Cree, C-R-E-E, and that is my handle. I almost started it by saying, greetings. This is your sister Cree back at y'all with that real effing talk. Because, just real quickly, whenever I used to watch, I don't remember when I came across Saras Sutanseti, however many years ago, but the way he would start every single video with, "This is your brother Saras Sutanseti with that real effing talk." And every time he did that, it's just the fact that he did it every time and he did it so emphatically with every single video, I used to just almost fall out of my chair laughing every single time. I would replay it 20 times in a row and it would have me in tears. And that went on for I don't know, months. Every time I would go on to one of his videos. Not that he's a joke, but that was just funny. Sometimes people are just funny and they don't mean to be. At any rate, this is going to be a multifaceted stream. I want to talk about a lot of things, a little bit emboldened because I saw that my colleague Crab, that's his acronym for counter-racism, anti-blackness, otherwise known as Brother Kofi, had said, gosh, you know what? Your little videos, like once a week, your little 2 hours, it's not enough. How about a marathon? So, and a few people said, yeah, how about that? So, okay. He said, why don't you just freestyle it, right? So, okay, I have a number of things to say, and I don't know how long it's going to take to say them. So, if I don't get in all the things that I intend that are in the description right now, I'll come back for a part 2 tomorrow, because I can't do it later tonight, most likely, because I do need moderation. I need someone to help me moderate, and I can't just ask people to be staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, especially if they have families and stuff like that. So I will do a part 2 either Saturday or Sunday if I don't get everything in that I want to talk about. But here are the things I want to do. So, and I think they're all interrelated, not sort of in a philosophical kind of way, this sort of esoteric way where all things are interrelated, which is true. But I mean, I think reasonably related mentally, I think the topics. So I want to clarify my position on AIOS and why I now call it AIOS, AIOS. I want to clarify that I think American Inheritors of Slavery is a better engineered term for what I believe the most sincere AIOS people are trying to accomplish. I want to address some of the comments that I've been seeing in the comment section on my channel. And I want to talk about, and they're related, I think I'll be able to show the relationship. I want to talk about this swirling issue. I want to deal with that head on. It's easy to say simple little things like, let me tell you something. Whenever I hear the term gender wars, or whenever I hear, well, I treat all swirlers the same way, that sounds about to me like all lives matter. It sounds like to me like everybody's, quote unquote, this is, white folks or non-black folks talking about, everybody's prejudiced against their own. It's a conflating and an equalizing of things that are not equal. And of course, when you're talking to people who have the weight of opinion on their side, meaning comparatively more power than you do, that's a difficult thing to say. It's just easier to go along and say, yeah, you're right, and sing like a Black Eyed Peas song, if you only have love for your own race, just pretend like everything's equal. And because swirling is such a sensitive issue to begin with, Yeah, I mean, I expect certain things. Just like, and this is, I will get to a little bit later on. There is a YouTuber, and her name is, what is her name? It is Successful Ladies Live. Like, I give her so many props because she took on the Nipsey Hussle thing straight on. I wanted to give some time for grieving because I think people deserve that space. And I don't necessarily think it's the best time to push an issue that involves a person who was much beloved when they're recently deceased. And she waited a little time, and she did preface it by R.I.P. But she did come right out and say, she basically came out and said that Nipsey Hussle was not a black man. Now, the reasoning that she uses is different than mine. Okay, she uses the cultural argument and whether or not people are consistently behaving in a way that doesn't other themselves from black people in America, which, if you've been following this channel, we don't do. We don't do any of that stuff. We don't do definitions of black people by how much they include themselves, how much they're down, how much they can speak our language, anything like that. We go with phenotype. And a lot of people have problems with that. And, and as a matter of fact, yeah, I check my comments. I mean, like a lot of you, I'm not a professional YouTuber. I don't, at this point, have aspirations to do that. And, I have a very busy life keeping my head above water. I'm not saying my life is more important than other YouTubers or more important than yours. I'm just saying I don't have all that time to make a bunch of videos all of a sudden. I don't have a bunch of time to moderate my comments. I do look at the little bell on my phone, and if it doesn't come up as a bell on my phone, a notification that I got a comment, then I don't even know that I got one. So yesterday I just happened to be on the dashboard and I saw these comments, right? And so pretty recently, a couple of people said, well, you know what? I don't even think you're a black person. I don't even think you're a black woman. You sound like a black woman who's trying to sound like, no, you sound like a white woman. You sound like a white woman who's trying to impersonate a black woman. You must be a mud shark. And you know what's so hilarious? Well, it's hilarious for many reasons. I mean, the fact of the matter is I am a black woman unambiguously, and I have been my entire life. Well, at some point I was a girl, and then I switched into a woman, whatever that definition is. And so that's funny to begin with. But what's even funnier is that this YouTube channel was not my idea, right? So I try to take good advice, I try to take consider. I don't take all advice, but I listen to people. I mean, I think every smart person should listen to people. You should listen to people that you think are smart, especially. And I listen to everybody. I listen because you never know when somebody's going to have something to add that you would have never come up with. But anyways, it was Kofi's idea. He said he believed that the Cree tool, the ability to measure whether or not somebody is black, is so crucial right now in the current political environment. And he said, you got to get on YouTube. Now, this is not something I'd ever considered, but at the time he told me to do that, he told me, he said, I guarantee you there are going to be people who are going to say you're white. He goes, guaranteed, right? And you should tell them that when you get to 50K subscribers, you'll show your face. And I mean, I didn't disbelieve him. Unsupported. Okay, I don't think I have to pay attention to that. It looks, because it says unsupported resolution for latency configuration. But I thought it was I thought it was possible, and I chuckled a little bit, but it happened so quickly. And it's hilarious to me. So I do want to clarify something. So I'm not going to go into that silliness about what does black sound like. I mean, that's a silliness. I mean, the fact of the matter is that wherever you are on the planet, there is a certain way. If there are non-black people there's a certain way that black people will sound as opposed to non-black people. In England, you can hear a black accent amongst the British because they pronounce their THs with I think with an F, as opposed to African American vernacular English, where we pronounce our THs with a D. So there is a way, and there are phrases, there are certain there's a certain lingo, and so I want to clarify, that, and it's a beautiful language to me. African American vernacular English is a beautiful language to me. And I believe that I speak it semi-fluently. I think I speak it semi-fluently. I am not as good as a native African American vernacular English speaker, even though I'm a Black person, because that's not my first language. That was not my environment in which I became proficient in speaking language. And so it's not my first language. And so even though in my day-to-day life I do speak AAVE quite a bit because I like the language and I can go back and forth, I think I'm pretty good at it. I really know, though, that when I'm at a keyboard and I have to watch the screen for this or that, and I have to switch out between, various modules in the broadcasting studio, or I have to take calls and stuff, I know I might be under mental pressure and mental stress. And whenever people are under mental pressure and mental stress, they usually revert back to their first language, right? And then that's going to sound, to me, that might sound inauthentic. And I'm still a little bit insecure about my ability to sound authentic, to speak it the way a native AAVE speaks it. So I'm not even trying to try to sound like a Black person. Now, you may hear me say some things that are AAVE, and that's not me slipping up. The fact remains, what has happened is that in the last, I would say 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years, and I can say this because I know this wasn't the case before that, African American vernacular English, because of hip hop, has become a part of standard American English. So just white people who like country and Western music in backwood Mississippi, if they're being interviewed, you can hear them saying some things that up until recently, up until 15 or 20 years ago, you would never hear anybody say except for a Black person. That was like immigrant speak. But it has become, as it should have, part of standard American English. So when you hear me say those terms, I'm probably saying it just the way some white person would do it, because it's part of standard American English now. Okay. But yeah, again, if you want to see my face as I'm talking, give me 50K subs. Now I might up it to 100K, depending on how fast it happens. And when it happens, it'll happen at an exponential growth, because my assignment apparently here on this planet during this sojourn is apparently one of a shock trooper. I'm cutting down the weeds and clearing paths, and I don't like that part, because there's a lot of opposition. It's always something nobody has ever heard of before, and then it gets adopted and put in the mainstream. But in the meantime, here I am hacking the weeds, and a lot of times, some of the stuff that I do, which I could have receipts for, and maybe at some point I will, just for fun. I will show that a lot of the stuff that's being spoken, a lot of the terminology, a lot of the positions that are being taken in Black YouTube and Black social media in general, are things that I started, because that's my role. But I mean, it's not also my role to just go around talking about, that was my idea. It just is what it is. Okay. There are people who have seen me in person. And, I might, I have plans to attend the AIOS conference, and possibly the NCOBRA conference. But there are people who've seen me in person, and there are people who have seen pics of me, which a pic of me I've taken down. I suspect that there are people who have seen a pic or two of me, of people that were taken by people who have met me in person. But yeah, I'm a Black person. And the other thing is, I can tell. See, that's the difference. I mean, maybe it's because of my background. I can tell. It's not a matter of accent. Me being able to tell a Black person speaking versus a non-Black person speaking, for me, does not have to be a matter of how words are pronounced or the vocabulary that's used, because I can hear a difference in the texture of the voice. A black woman or a black man has a different texture to their voice. It's a thicker texture where you will hear, like if you had your audio player, say your Real Player or your Windows Media, because I've tested it, you will find many more frequencies in general occurring simultaneously in the voice of a black person to give a richer sound. And that's whether we're singing or we're speaking. And so I know that my voice has a black texture. Just pay attention to the texture of my voice. And also, there's a certain cadence, there's a certain rhythm with which I speak. Even though I don't have, say, an accent that is AAVE, there's a certain cadence to the way that my syllables are pronounced that you really, you're just not going to find that often with people who are not black. So if you were to listen to the cadence and you listen to the texture of my voice, I'm a black woman. But I mean, I just happen to find that interesting and amusing and funny. Okay, so let me look at my outline here and see if I can be efficient with your time. Okay, so I want to address, let me explain very briefly why I think AIOS is a better engineered term for what Black AIOS people are trying to accomplish. American Inheritors of Slavery are a subset of American Descendants of Slavery. Because American Descendants of Slavery itself it's not specific enough, because there are people who are not black who have one or two descendants who were enslaved. So if you were to go back to 1865, which was the end of slavery, you're going back, I've forgotten how many generations it is. I counted it last night. But let's say 20 years per generation. You're going back to a period at the end of slavery where the infant might have seen, the infant may have been cradled in his or her mother's arms at the time that they got the news that, they had been freed by the, quote unquote, by the Emancipation Proclamation. And at that time, you have 256 little babies in their mother's arms who are your ancestors, 256. Okay, so there are white people running around here who had 2, 3, 4, 10, 12 of those 256 ancestors who were enslaved. But if they're not black, if they're white, they didn't inherit the caste. They didn't inherit the uniform. Therefore, they did not inherit the cost of slavery. We have. So the American inheritors of slavery are the Black AIOS. And that's why I think AIOS is a better term. You never know when something's going to pick up. Quite a few things that I have said have picked up, but there's all this pushback, this defensiveness, this opposition. For now, I'm used to initial opposition. That's fine. As long as we can be civil about it. And most people have been. Also, there was a point of correction was made, and I think it was an important point of correction, but also one that I think also I want to address, which is, I had spoken in the last stream about the need to recognize that a person may have come here in 1836, 1875, after the end of the Civil War. And I had said that those people didn't escape the terror of black codes and Jim Crow and everything that went along with it, whether that was, 1875 or 1910, 1920, that's what I'd said. And so someone made a point to say, well, the immigrants who came here from the islands, they didn't settle in the South. They settled in the northern part of the United States, where there was not, at least the person said, naked Jim Crow. And it was important that he put that preface, naked Jim Crow, because there was never, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, everybody found out that the northern part of the United States was no haven for black people. Just that you weren't sharecropping, and probably, no, you weren't required to look down. You weren't required to get off the sidewalk when a white person was walking towards you. But it was Jim Crow, and that there are many YouTube videos. I think either PBS made one or someone like that, BBC, and it was called Jim Crow of the North, and it was just focused on Minnesota. And the way Jim Crow worked there was through racial covenants, and they had school quote unquote segregation out here in California. I mean, the relationship between white and other non-black people and black people has always been a hostile one. There was no haven, so that if people came over from the islands, during that time, and really even now, I'm going to say even now, from Africa, they're still encountering harm on the basis of their uniform, on the basis of their phenotype. They haven't inherited all the debt that goes with slavery. If you want to this is a strategy, right? Because it's a strategy. Because one thing that Neely Fuller did make clear is that if you really want to look at it from the long-range realistic view, there's really only one nation when it comes to non-black people. He used to say white people. There's the white nation, and then they have little states, okay? And then there's the white nation, and then there's us. There's the non-black nation, and then there's us. So this AIOS strategy, or this AIOS strategy, is a strategy that's designed to say, okay, well, we have certain claims. And I don't think we should conflate our concerns. I've said that before, because we should federate, but we do have, differences in what we need. Right? So it's a strategy, and it's one that, might get something, and it might work, and it might be able to be replicated by other people in other parts of the world for the people who most proximately caused their harm. But certainly if you came over here into the United States from some other part of the world, there was a cost to your phenotype. And so that's why I have suggested that we should separate out the cost of slavery, what is owed for that, and then the cost of being a black person generation by generation. So hopefully I've clarified that. The Jim Crow of the North thing. Are we all ready? Well, are we all ready at the swirling thing? Nah, I'm gonna skip around that a little bit, but I'm gonna get to it. So since we're talking about the strategy of AIOS, since we're talking about that, I think somewhere in the comments it said, well, and this was in response to me saying, I really don't think there's a difference between the way some of the older line people went about trying to get reparations and the AIOS movement. I really don't think there's a substantial difference. And I think somebody said, well, I think in just what they were saying is the difference here is that this is one that threatens to withhold the black vote from the Democratic Party. And that none of the other movements did that. I mean, okay, there's a point. But the way that I see it, I still don't see a significant difference. Because, look, the bottom line for non-black people is not, the bottom line for people who practice the global system of racism, which is anti-blackness, is not votes, whether it's a particular candidate or a particular party. So the bottom line for them is not that the Democrats retain the black vote or stay in power. And when it's the Republicans, or when it was the Republicans, because this flipped, this just keeps flip-flopping. At one point, the Republicans were the party of black people, because that was the party of Lincoln. And that held through until until JFK, actually, really. It started to change with FDR and the New Deal. But at one point, the Republican Party, they were the radical Republicans, and it was the Dixiecrats, the Democrats, the Southerners. Those were the ones that were thought of in the same way that Republicans are thought of today. And it flip-flopped. And guess what? You know what? The Republicans didn't shed any tears over that. Just like the Democrats won't shed any tears if they lose our votes, because ultimately they all already know that no matter what disagreement they have, they are on the same page to keeping us subjugated. Now they want to run us around with laws and circles, EEOC this, EEOC this. You go there. If you've ever tried it, you'll know that the greatest chances are that your suit is going to be dismissed without merit, or they may give you a right to sue letter. And the whole purpose of it was so that you could afford to do it. Well, a right to sue letter, now you've got to go hawk your house. You got to go get a second mortgage on your house or your grandma's house or something, or you're just out because now you've got to pay an attorney. He's not going to do it for free. And that was the Democrats had a whole lot of strategies that were about just running us around in circles. They got nowhere. Okay. And this is basically what they're up to now. So we can withhold our vote from the Democratic Party. And you know what they'll do? They'll do something similar to what was done in 1964, the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And it'll seem like we're getting somewhere and we'll get a little something. But the basic relationship, the power relationship of non-black over black will not change. That is their plan, and they're on the same page with the Republicans on that. So ultimately, as I said before, what's going to hold their feet to the fire is not going to be a fear of votes. What's ultimately going to hold their feet to the fire is not going to be a fear of losing our money. What money? What little money we got, and they have control of the entire economy. They can raise prices and they can raise their own salaries and keep ours. The ultimate thing for them is keeping control over us. There was an article, I wish I don't have that tab pulled up, but it was about these poor people in Kentucky and Virginia, poor white folks. But this is nothing new. George Wallace, the Southern governor, the Dixiecrat, segregation now, segregation forever. He said he started out thinking that he could get a lot of votes by making poor white people understand that they had more in common with black people. And then he figured out that wasn't it. And then he figured out the stance he had to take. Okay. It's the same thing now. These people right now, 2019, these poor white people in Virginia and Kentucky and other places, they actually came right out and said, they would die. They don't have health care. Because they're in these southern nations where the governors had said, you can keep your money, Obama. They don't want your Obamacare. Now, they don't have any good reason for that, but it's because he came up with it, right? So they don't have health care. And many of them, some of them have died, and some of them have said they're willing to die. They'd rather die. They'd actually rather lose their lives than do anything that seems like it might help black people. Because the thing is, you take Medicare money and black people don't suffer as bad. Plus a black man thought of it. They don't want that. They'd rather, so they are martyrs for the cause of anti-blackness. Okay. So I just say all that so that people can keep your eye on the ball. They always do. It's never going to be about, if you're a Christian, it's never going to be about Christian solidarity. Those white Christians practice white Christianity, practice white supremacy. When I say white, I mean non-black people. Okay. It's never going to be about Muslim solidarity. You can ask the you can ask the black people who've been enslaved and mistreated by white Arabs or non-black Arabs over there. It's never going to be about anything. It's not going to be about religion, money, votes, anything. It's going to be about raw power. It's going to be about the ability to keep us subject to them. And I do not mean genocide, but that I think is beyond the scope of this broadcast. Now, when I say genocide, in that way, I'm just talking about they don't want to completely wipe us out from the earth. They do want to target our type. In that sense, if you're talking about targeting a certain type to kill when you need to kill a large number of us when you need to, that is genocide. That's another definition of genocide, because it is a certain gene type, right? Which can be distinguished by phenotype for you people who still want to say that, that it's not real. Yeah, they'll do that. I mean, they have to they cull the herd here and there, but they want to keep us subject to them. Like I said, that is the subject of it's beyond what I want to talk about here, but I'll just say that we are their battery pack, very much like the movie Matrix. We are their golden egg. We are their golden geese. We are the geese that lay the golden eggs. And I think even more specifically, our type here, black people in the Americas and specifically North America. But I mean, I consider the outlying islands because we had so much dealings with them for so long. My tribe. Now, you know, they're you might say they're first cousins, and for strategic reasons I can see why you'd want to separate the claims out and have them go after, because see, they have a claim against the United States government too because of the slave breaking, but you have them go after the French and have them go after, you know, or petition, not go after because they're not in a position to go after, but have them petition, because that's what this is. It's not a demand. Stop acting like it's a demand. You know, it's not a demand. It would be a demand if somehow it would really, really hurt and kill these non-black Democrats if you didn't vote for them. They don't care that much. They don't care enough not to stop mistreating us, okay, or to give us what we need. But I understand strategically why you'd want to separate those claims out, okay? So have Haiti make their petitions to the French and so on, and Jamaica to both actually the Spanish and the English, and so on and so on. I get it, okay. But yeah, that's not their bottom line. Yeah, because they'll die. They're willing to give their lives. They are willing to give their lives. Okay. Now I want to get to. I have something else to show you. I have actually a different graphic. How about that? Let's take this one off. It always takes me a little bit to do it, so just bear with me. But I'll get it. This is the one I want to show you, but I want to take off the, I want to take off this one. There we go. So ad hominem attacks. That's what I want to get into. You know, so before I get into that, so that's something else that I've learned from Neely Fuller, right? Is that you want to follow the logic. Follow the logic. And the logic just means the way of getting something done, which includes incorporating the truth. And the truth is simply that which is, okay? So I want to talk about how to deal with, why it's so important to follow the logic, and how when you do that, it tells you how to deal with ad hominem arguments. Some people call them attacks, and we're going to go over what ad hominem means. It also tells you how to deal with what you might suspect is, or people might suspect are agents. Now, an ad hominem attack is, or an ad hominem argument is saying that what a person is saying is wrong simply because they're wrong in some other way that is completely unrelated what they're talking about. Completely unrelated. Now, if it's related, then it's not ad hominem, right? So there are times when I'm aware that there is a person who has a non-black husband or wife. I know they do. And they're saying various things. Now, they're saying various things with their mouth. As long as the things that they are saying, with the things that they are writing, or the things that they are orally saying are logical and true, I don't take issue with the things that they're saying that are true, especially if they're helpful to me, and the truth is always helpful to me, just because they're with a white partner. They are also, however, saying something by their behavior, because a lot of communication is nonverbal. So how you wear your hair, or who you're sleeping with or married to, says something as well, but they could be unrelated to what the person is speaking with words. Okay. So an ad hominem attack, this is what comes up when you Google it, is an argument or reaction directed against a person rather than the position they are maintaining. And I think it was Malcolm who said, I'm not going to be put in the position of denying their conclusions just because, or the truth of their statements, just because I disagree with their conclusions. So that is also going to address sort of comments that what I'm doing by measuring blackness is similar to what the Nazis did in Germany. So this is a version of ad hominem. It's a guilt by association, and I'm going to get into a guilt by association that's been running around about Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, and shockingly to me, Dr. William Darity, the economist out of Duke University. But guilt by association is, that's a version of ad hominem. And so you say, okay, well, you're doing all these measurements on people's physical features, and that's what Hitler and the Nazis did in Germany. And they were saying that the Aryans, a certain type of white people, were different, and they did all these measurements, and they said that the Aryans and the white people in Europe were better than everybody else, and you're doing the same thing, you Nazi. Okay. Okay. So where Hitler and the Nazis took it is they took it to harm people. They took it to kill gypsies. They took it to kill a lot of the black people who were left over there from World War I. They took it to murder homosexuals. They took it to murder Jews because they held them to be not white at the time. Maybe some of them actually were, because I've seen pictures that say the ones they really went after were the ones that looked more Sephardic or more Arabic looking. But I mean, all of that is non-black people for me. But at any rate, he did that, and it was horrible. It was deplorable. I am not a praiser of Adolf Hitler or the Nazis. But just because he measured, he was able to determine, he was able to say, well, look, we Aryans look different than South Asians. We Aryans look different than Eastern Europeans. We Aryans look different than Persians. We sure as hell look different than black people. Okay. Just, that's a truth. And if he wanted to measure what those differences were, and he did so in a pretty accurate way, that would also be the truth. It's what you do with it that's the difference. So just because he used it for ill and harm and evil doesn't mean that it isn't that it can't also be used for truth. Just like a gun can be used to defend your home, and it can be used to murder somebody in cold-blooded intent, right? But it's not the tool per se that is evil. It can be used for good or for harm. Same with fire, same with water, same with just about anything. Food, these things we need. Now, we need, what we have not had is a way to measure who's black. But we don't want to use it for harm. We want to use it for good, for ourselves. We don't want to hurt anybody. We don't want to hurt ourselves. And we don't want to hurt other people. We just want to be able to tell who's us and who's not, so we can conserve resources. That's it. So this is a sort of a fallacious argument. The ad hominem, a version of that is guilt by association. In the comments, I was also asked, let's see if I can put on something more interesting. Oh, I like this one. Okay. So in the comments, I was also asked about an article that seemed to be written to me, but when I looked at the picture of the author, he looked like a white guy to me, right? But I've been hearing this stuff kind of off and on. It's kind of been a big deal. About Yvette Carnell being a board member of an organization called Progressives for Integration Reform, PFIR. And that is actually a front group because the Southern Poverty and Loss Center, SLPC, who's been tracking quote unquote terrorist organizations for I don't know how many decades, maybe a couple. And they're considered an authority on who's a terrorist. And I think Louis Farrakhan is on that list. A guy I used to know in college, they call him a firebrand. But anyway, he's on that list, and I know, he's not any terrorist. But I mean, it might be. It may be this organization is that it's supposed to be a front for is in fact maybe they're trying to make it a front for and here's the article. I'm gonna share a screen. I still haven't figured out a good way to do that, but let me see if I can share the screen. Maybe, I'm not promising I can share it, but I'll give it a shot. I know what I'm sharing now. Okay, there it is. So, yeah, maybe it is a front for this organization called FAIR, which is known to be founded by this white nationalist, John Tanton. You can see right there, I've highlighted it. But that doesn't mean that is the reason that Yvette is on that board. I mean, there are times when people who are normally hostile to you are doing some things that are in your interest. So, I mean, one example of that is, let's just look back at World War II, right? So at World War II, the United States and Russia were allies. And the United States was an opponent, the Allies versus the Axis. And so Russia and the United States were on the same side, and Japan and Germany were on the other side. Okay, I want this to be bigger, and it's looking like it's not. Why is it not bigger? I guess I'm supposed to transform this. I'm not going to. It's too ugly to do that. You go back to this. Yeah, so you had Russia and the United States on one side, and Japan and Germany on the other. And not too long after that, the United States and Japan were on the same side, and Russia was an enemy. Because in world affairs, you have no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. You have things you're trying to accomplish. And if Yvette has reasoned that the non-black people who are called Hispanics are their large numbers of immigration are really causing problems in terms of taking benefits and jobs from what I call AIOS people, she calls AIOS people, well, then she has something in common for right now with these Euro white people who can't seem to get on the same page with these other non-black people, these Mexicans. Okay. And so she has judged that what they are doing in terms of the position they're taking on immigration is something that is in black people's favor. And she's had to figure out how to balance that with the black immigrants. I have I've stated what my problem is with that. I did that I think maybe in the second broadcast, that I think that the black immigrants are taking a disproportionate share of things. I think the reason that, and I've said the reason that they're doing it. However, they are a tiny problem compared to the problem that non-black people present to us, and a tiny problem compared to the problem we're going to have if we don't make very specific that the people who deserve reparations, who are descendants of slavery, are black people. The phenotype tests. Okay. And then you separate the goats from the lambs by just making, you show your phenotype, and then you look at people's birth certificates, and the immigrants are going to show some evidence of being immigrants. And then they may have a separate claim for mistreatment based on their phenotype that doesn't have anything to do with chattel slavery here. Okay. But just trying to smear her and say that she is a front for quote unquote conservative white supremacist groups just because she happens to believe she has something in common. She's defended herself on that. But I was surprised to see, I saw also a little attack on Antonio Moore, because he's a former DA. That's a job he took. And why be a DA? It's like Kamala Harris. She could have been a public defender, but she decided to go on the prosecutorial side, and she got to the very highest level, being the what do you call him? What do you call it? Robert Kennedy was at somebody tell me, attorney. Why can't I get it? Anyways, the top attorney for the state of California. Okay, so so she took that, and so they tried to use the fact that he was a DA, and kind of insinuate that he has leanings towards this conservative stuff too, and that both of them are fronts. But then where I was really, really shocked to hear, and this was brought up in the comment section in my videos. What I was really shocked to hear was that William Darity was being maligned because his data has been used a lot by Yvette on her channel and by Antonio on their channel. And because his data has been used a lot, they have talked here and there. And somehow he managed to retweet some things, I guess. And then he said, well, I didn't mean to. I didn't realize that this was an organization. I don't believe in attacking people. Okay. Again, now they're trying to smear him by, guilt by association, because he's associated with Yvette, and Yvette in some ways associated with PFIR, and PFIR, this long chain of connection, guilt by association. And here's the thing, just like I told you folks that I only have the time to check my comments maybe once or twice a week. If I can imagine at this point, and there were times when it was like this for me, but look, the amount of tweeting and Facebooking and YouTubing that is going on about this AIOS thing is far beyond anything that either Antonio or Yvette can keep up with. And so when somebody tweets something, or posts something on Facebook or on YouTube that may be problematic, if they don't respond to it and say they disassociate themselves with it, now they're tarred by saying, well, you must agree with it because you didn't distance yourself. They can't keep up with everything. I'm not going to be able to keep up with everything as our movement grows. Okay. Well, our sub movement, which is this idea, which is, I call them the Cree colleagues. We're not going, and everything that we don't dispute is not something we agree with. It just may be something we never saw or didn't have the time to keep up with. We speak for ourselves. We know what we believe in, and that's that. And I would say the same thing for Yvette. I would say the same thing for Antonio, and certainly Dr. Darity, whose data I've been using for many years as well. Okay. Now I say all this because it's very important. We need to dig ourselves out of the mammoth hole compared to the other people on the planet. And it's very important that we use our time effectively and efficiently. The way you use your time effectively, efficiently, we can afford to waste time less than any other people. And yet we're encouraged in so many ways to waste more time than other people. Okay, I'm not even talking about the amount of just silly things we do because we have post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic slave syndrome, or just trauma from bearing up under all this pressure of being a Black person. Which, by the way, you know that guy Joshua Solomon. I'll show it to you one time. You might look it up. He was this young kid in the 90s who says he didn't think being a Black person was a big deal. He took this drug called Swirling, turned his skin dark. He shaved his head real short, and he waited until it took place, and then he just went out in the world. And that guy, he couldn't take it for a week. He couldn't take it for 2 weeks. And so this is a pressure that we're under from cradle to grave. Okay. Where was I with this? It's just we cannot afford this. This is it. So we cannot afford. That's the silliness part. That's why we a lot of times just act so silly. But when we're trying to be constructive, when we're doing things that we think will improve the conditions of our people, either Black people collectively, globally, or our tribe here, in America, we still have to try our best to be efficient and effective. That means following logic. And that means not getting caught up in fallacious logic. Stop all of this fallacious logic, these ad hominem arguments, these guilt by associations. We just don't have time for it. And here's the thing. And so this gets into the part about being an agent. Now, we know agents exist, right? We know that as a matter of record, because the records that they allow us to have seen by the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. So we know. And we know it continues. We know that the tactics they use are what seems like these tactics here. I wanted to change this graphic. So we got all these. We can't tell what's true. Let me take this off. Display capture. We can't tell what's true. We can't tell what's false. Who's, is it COINTELPRO? Is it the counterintelligence program, or is it just human nature? Which one is it? What's the truth? What's a lie? Is this person an agent? Or is it just human nature that people like to gossip with one another and be competitive with one another? You just can't. You don't need to worry about that. All you have to do, I don't worry about who the agents are. Because they say, well, you got to watch the people who are closest to you because they're the one. I don't worry about that. What I worry about is what the person is doing or saying. I analyze whether or not what they're doing or saying is true or false, constructive or non-constructive. And I think two men who are very different in their approaches, one who's black, one who's not, but both of them have been trying to deal with racism, although they might have different definitions of racism. I don't know. Kamal Kambon, who said that really controversial thing on C-SPAN about 10 years ago. And also Neely Fuller Jr., who would never have said anything like that, because I just know he would never have said anything like that, right? And you'll just have to look up what he said. I'm not going to say it here. I don't want my channel shut down. But both of them agree. They say, well, we don't worry about agents. Why worry about agents? Because here's the thing. What they're going to do is what they're going to do. They don't have to talk about it. What they're going to do, if they want to stop you, they can stop you. They have shown that they are willing to end people's lives if they think that's the best way to go about it. At certain points, that's not the best way to go about it because you might make the person a martyr, or you can't kill everybody, or maybe you bring more attention if you kill them too early, that type of thing. But they're going to do what they're going to do. So of course there are people being sent, and maybe they're being coerced because they're able to be coerced. They're not great soldiers, but they know that if they don't do X, Y, and Z, they might go to jail for 50 years, or they might send their brother to jail, or they might kill their children, or maybe they're being coerced, or maybe they're just being bribed. Maybe they get a bunch of goodies that they wouldn't get if they didn't cooperate. Maybe they are being sent. We know that there are agents because we know that is a matter of record. That happened in SCLC. The long-term photographer, he was their photographer for 40 years. Everybody trusted him. Turned out he was an FBI informant. I don't worry about that. What I worry about is what they're doing and saying. Do I think it's constructive or non-constructive? Do I think it's true or not true? That's it. If they're an agent, they're an agent. But truth is truth. The way you engineer things is by using the principles that are in the universe, that which is, and proceed doing what you're going to do. And I also recognize that as part of COINTELPRO, this also is a matter of record. We're supposed to be suspicious of one another. Remember, the documents are out there. So within the Black Panther Party, they sent, they sent letters, false letters that seemed like they were, in opposition to one another, that like they were going to try to kill one another, like they were going to try to take each other over, and it wasn't true. But the letters seemed authentic, and so the Black Panther Party, for other reasons too, but it disintegrated from within because they didn't trust each other anymore. They got violent with one another because they believed that the letters were authentic. Same thing happened between the Panthers as an organization and an organization at the time, we're talking about the 1960s, called United Slaves. So they sent letters to make it seem as if one was saying something that they weren't, and they were going to try to harm each other. And next thing you know, they're shooting each other, right? So that's part of it. So being concerned or saying, or they would accuse each other of being agents, and they would give all kinds of information. It was the agent who was accusing other people of being agents. You don't know what's what. You don't need to. You know that they're going to get involved in what we're doing, but as long as you focus on that which is what they're saying true, is what they're saying false, And don't go along with things that don't seem right to you just because previously many of the things they said did seem right. Because that's a tactic too. You can get lulled into it. It doesn't quite seem right. You're scratching your head a little bit, but everybody else is enthusiastic and everything, like they have been with everything else. And this person to you has seemed right on point before. And there's this religion of this person really knows what they're talking about, even though that didn't quite make sense. You go along with it. And maybe the going along with it was something that was, well, we're going to go throw this Molotov cocktail, or we're going to threaten this person's life online. We should do that. Well, you don't really understand why they're saying do that, but it seems to you that they've always been right before, and next thing you know, you're locked up or you're dead. Just like there are no permanent enemies or no permanent friends, there are no permanent sages. There are no permanent correct persons. We all err. I err. Yvette errs. Dr. Martin Luther King erred. The Honorable Malik El-Haj Shabazz, Malcolm X, he erred. We all err. We all do that. Okay, so we may have been right at one point, and maybe we're right 98% of the time, but maybe on this one thing we're wrong. If it doesn't seem correct to you, this is something Mr. Fuller used to always say too, Neely Fuller. Only execute the suggestions at a time and place of your choosing that you think are correct. If you think the suggestion is correct and you think the time and the place to implement that suggestion is correct, then that is the time to do it. If you do not think it is correct, you don't do it. That's code. That's called counter-racist code. I still say that. Okay. So that's how I deal with this whole agents thing, through logic. The logic of what the person is doing and saying at the time. I don't give a carte blanche to anyone. I don't think you should give a carte blanche to anyone. Don't give a carte blanche to me. I'm just a person. Yeah. Okay. Ad hominem. Oh, so now let me make sure I have these in the order that I want them, because I made these pictures and I think I'm ready now. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into the swirling thing. Let's take off this one and talk about swirling. I say that not all swirlers are created equal, but I'm trying to take this one off here. Okay. And so it's time for this provocative one here. All swirlers are not created equal. And so, here's your swirl ice cream cone, your chocolate, your vanilla. I've placed the male symbol on the black side, the brown skin, the brown ice cream. And I've placed the female symbol on the brown. So you got two different kinds of swirl couples. So you've got the black male, black male, non-black female. And then you've got the other type, which is the black female and the non-black male. And everybody that I've heard, not everybody, because there are people like Chrissy and so on who understand the difference. But I want to make my position clear on this. And so I'm going to. They're not the same thing. And any honest black male of at least average intelligence knows they're not the same thing. And you say, well, why not? They're both traitorous. Da, da, da. Okay. Now, let me state at the front of it that obviously for the collective, it is not in the interests of AIOS people, AIOS people, black people globally to engage in interracial friendships, let alone interracial sexual relationships. It's not good for us because it affects our minds. I usually won't bring it up, but it almost always comes up because the person's reasoning is faulty. But there's a standard that is not only a double standard, and I'll talk about the double standard first, but I'm more concerned with the upside down standard. The upside down standard has to do with the fact that all swirlers are not created equal. Okay, so the double standard is you can go to I don't know how many YouTube channels and that are run by very popular Black male YouTubers who just in passing will mention that there was a time in their life when they were chasing after non-Black women, whether or not we're talking about the hybrids in Brazil or if we're talking about, actual Asians, whole Asians or whole Euros. Okay. And they will just say it in passing. They will say they were lost. They will say it was before they got their mind right. But that's accepted in passing. I mean, with very few exceptions, everybody just accepts that it was a time when they just didn't know any better. And they got better. And now they're strong advocates and supporters of building the Black nation or doing what it is that we need to do to get free. It's not even needed to be forgiven. It's just accepted as just, hey, boys will be boys. It's completely, the double standard is if it's a Black woman, if it's a Black female who has a past of doing it, and maybe the Black males did it 3-4 years ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, but the Black female may have done it 10, 20 years ago. Oh no, you can't ever forget that. You can't ever let it go. Now she's a bed wench. She's a bed wench forever, can never be forgiven. Nobody will ever want her. You better not listen to anything she ever has to say. She's a hypocrite. And oh my God, don't let it be that she actually, while she was with that person, like got married and had a baby. Because that's what happens when people have sex. A lot of times they have babies. Okay. Now he could be running around with his hybrid children, but have found his way. He won't mention it very much, and hardly anybody else will mention it. But don't let her have one. Oh my God, she's a bed wench and she's crazy. She's a hypocrite. Don't listen to anything she has to say. That's an argument ad hominem, and it's a double standard. And I even have somebody who was supporting me, I think. I mean, you never know exactly who anybody is. But, he did quite a bit of work for me and helping me understand, I think the algorithm here at YouTube. And he's like, now I got to tell you something. You keep mentioning on every broadcast, you keep mentioning that you were once married to a white man. Now, you know that Yvette doesn't mention X, Y, and Z because she understands it's like a political campaign and she can't mention certain things. Yeah, but see, I got to keep first of all, people already know that about me. It's part of my experience. It's part of my lived experience. It's part of what informs what I know about the system of anti-Blackness and how it is practiced by non-Black men and how it is practiced against Black men and the ways it is practiced against Black women. It's part of my experience. It was part of my learning curve. It was a very painful learning curve, but it's part of my experience. And I remember, I think what really, we're still talking about the double standard, not the upside down standard, which I will get to. I think what really got to me and made me want to deal with this was I was watching, just a YouTube lineup. And there was this guy named, and I don't usually like to do this, but there's this guy who, take this off. How do I do this? It's a little slow. I'll show you the pic that really, really got to me. And it was on a YouTube video. And it was where is he? I just want you to see this one. Where is it? Where is he? Maybe I took it off. I hope I didn't. I think I saw it. Just give me a chance here. I almost want to put on some music because this is like super important to me. Here it is. But it's not. Wow. I wonder why it's not. Okay, there it is. Here it is. I keep saying here it is, but it's not doing it. No. That's not it. This is it. This is it. So this is a screenshot from a video of this fist in the air. I mean, he's actually saying F YouTube, and he's interviewing what he calls an ex-swirler. And I just thought this is all kinds of crazy, because he wants to talk about the fact that you can't be pro-black if you're with a non-black partner, and I agree with that. But there was this insinuation that you could never be, because then he began asking questions. Would you ever be willing to date a black man who'd ever been with a white or non-black woman? Would you? You know, the implication there is that you're forever soiled. You know, now this is never true for males, but it's true. Just that question, the implication is she's forever soiled. And look at him. Okay? Now, this is not an argument ad hominem, but it's when he is saying false things when he uses the word we to describe black men. We black men don't like such and such. We black men need to this and this and that. You are not in a position to be making those statements to her, because you, sir, are not a black man. And I don't even like it when the black men do it. But the fact that black men would even allow a man like this to talk to a black woman like that, to make it seem as if she, that term bedwench, there is no male equivalent of that. Now you can say the bed bucks, but that doesn't have the same sting. Just like for all of you around here who use the word cracker or cracker, that doesn't have the same sting to you as nigger. Nigger, okay? So just the fact that is allowed to go on, that's what triggered me to need to talk about that. Because I know that I just want to dead this right now, at least for now. It's probably going to come up episodically, but it happened and it was painful. And I'll tell you something else, and I'm going to share something very personal that I have not shared before, and I'm going to try not to cry. I'm serious here, because I didn't think it was anybody's business. Because it had nothing to do with what I was saying. But there's an individual who made it other people's business because I trusted him. Yep, I was a male. And I'm not going to speak his name because he doesn't deserve it. And I believe he's a narcissist who lives on this. But it was a very painful experience. And that's going to lead me to the other graphics. Let me take this off for a second. Gathering my emotional composure. So you can see we're going to go there. I have another graphic here. One second. I am trying to show some statistics that those of you who have been with me on YouTube are familiar with. Okay. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit quiet so you can look at this. But this is a graphic that showed anonymous dating preferences that was taken from the Facebook dating app, Are You Interested? AYA. And what you can see there is that, okay, of course, black women are the least preferred of all women by all races of men, including black men. This is what's going on when no matter what people say, this is the truth. But if you look at that same graphic, what you will see is that nobody prefers black men except for black women. So we're loyal. Black men are always our preference. Black men were my preference. But let me tell you, just like Eartha Kitt said in the 1960s when she was interviewed about it, she was asked, why did you marry a white man? You can read that. I didn't even have to go to the site. I just took a screenshot of the Google results. You know, people say, well, she said, I would have liked to marry a black man, but there wasn't one because the white girls had them. And she may not have even been black, but I mean, she's this very light-skinned woman. So you can imagine what it's like for brown-skinned women and dark-skinned women. Okay. And that was her in 1950 something. And it certainly was the case for me when I was, getting to the point where I had to start worrying about my fertility. But between ages, 16 and I'll just share some personal history. Between ages 15 and 30, that was the situation for me. And it is the situation now. If it hasn't gotten any better, maybe it's gotten worse. I don't think so. And so these people who want to use the statistics that the vast majority of black men are married to black women, this is a matter of availability, not opportunity. We see what happens when opportunity gets looser. Black men they go for what they prefer. This graphic doesn't show anything different than how it's ever been. The same situation that is facing young black women today was the situation that I was faced when I was their age. I preferred black men, but they didn't want that from me. They did not want to date me. They did not want to marry me. They might say you're cute for a black girl, but that's about it. Their preferences were always, and they would tell me that, just like these young black women talk about it. Okay? And to make it, when my sister and I were in high school, we went to a high school that had maybe 2 or 3% black people in it. But these stellar athletes were the black guys. And they were, of course, beautiful, beautiful young men, beautiful boys. But even as late as the 1970s, swirling was a big deal. Like, you didn't see black guys dating black girls that far back. Black boys in high school in the late 1970s, early 1980s were dating white girls. Now, maybe the difference is the timing, because what would happen as soon as high school was over and their parents told them it was time to get serious, suddenly the black boys saw us. But they would see, I remember these black boys who never paid me any attention in high school, suddenly kind of saw me. My first year in community college, because I spent 1 year in community college, but not as a date. The one guy who dated me said, I usually don't date girls who don't have light hair, light skin, and long, pretty hair. And that was supposed to be my compliment. And I remember who his former girlfriend was. Okay, so that was the date. The other one was a guy I saw at a college football game, and he said he bought me a soda, and then he offered to give me a ride home. I thought, oh, well, maybe he wants to date me. Maybe he sees me differently now. I got a new style. No, next thing I knew, I was in the car driving around some back road somewhere that I knew what kind of, it was a dangerous road. It was way out in the back hills somewhere. He stopped the car in the middle of the night, and he about tried to rape me. And I had to push him off. Now, his dad worked with my dad at NASA, so he was only going to take it so far. But if he was going to push himself on me, that's all he wanted. That was my experience. My first posters on my walls were all black teen bops, but that's not who they wanted. Now, so what I'm saying here is that as a collective, of course, it's not in our interest to be mated with non-black people. However, I'm trying to give you truth, because truth is what undergirds science. it might be in the best interest of an individual. And occasionally it can be for black male too. But I haven't gotten to the upside down part yet. Well, actually I have, because I gave you the AIOS statistics. Okay, go back to that one. Open that one up. And Eartha Kitt, take off. AYA, put on. So occasionally, there are these black guys that say, well, a lot of us, we have interests that black women don't like, or, we're the nice guys, or we're the nerds, we're the ones with the jobs, and they don't want us until it's too late, until they've already had 3 or 4 or 5 kids, or I'm just not the type of black guy that black women like. I mean, occasionally that happens, but you can see here by the evidence what the preferences are. Okay, and black women, by the way, are allowed to have physical preferences. We are allowed to like what we like. Okay, just like any other person. But that was the situation. So we have an upside down statistic, meaning not only do you have a double standard of treating black women who have a history of this differently than black men, but you have a situation in which black men have a plethora of beautiful black women of all kinds of interests, of all kinds of body types, of all kinds of, I'm talking about phenotypically black women, so I'm not talking about black women come in all kinds of colors. No, I'm talking about unambiguously black women who have a wide variety of body types, wide variety of beautiful body types who are fit. And by the way, black women are not less fit. We're not any fatter than white women. I can show you the receipts on that. We do have a higher BMI, but BMI is not an accurate measure of adiposity or amount of fat on black people. They use white people as a model for that. But we don't have, when you actually do a displacement test or a caliper test that measures the amount of fat on the body, or it measures waist to hip ratio, white women and black women have equal amounts statistically of adiposity, of fatness. Hispanic women are significantly fatter than either white or black women, and Asian women actually have more fat on them than is thought, but they tend to be tinier. But they tend to be tiny with, they're like these, a lot more of them are small fat women. They're small, but they have a high degree of fat. At any rate, black men have a large range of women to choose from. And they are black women's first preference. So when a black man chooses to date or marry or partner with a non-black woman, it's not in the same ball game as a black woman. A black woman is forced into that situation. So while swirling is not good for us as a collective, and therefore not good for us overall as individuals, it's just like a stop sign or a speed limit. A speed limit is something that we all agree is something, or stopping at red lights is something that's good for us as a collective. Overall, the individuals who live in a place where there are automobiles understand that it is better if we all observe the speed limits and the stoplights and stop signs. Because if we don't, we're just going to have all kinds of intersection crashes, and a lot of us are going to be killed. So it's in the best interest of all of us. But you might have your baby in the back seat trying to speed to the hospital because maybe he or she is having a severe asthma attack or is injured him or herself, and you want to get that baby into medical care as fast as you can, and maybe there's no ambulance around. Well, guess what? You're not going to think it's in your best interest at that point to observe speed limits, stop signs, or stoplights. And this is the position that many black women are in. We understand collectively what would be great if everybody would adhere to it. But because of black males' behavior, not preferring us, and this is not anything recent, there are a lot of black women individually who, for their own individual sake, if they plan on ever being a mother, if they plan on ever even having a warm body next to them, they turn to swirling as a last result. Because as human beings, we're not made to be lonely. We may have to shut out a whole lot of things. And in that interview, with the one with the guy, the Puerto Rican guy who says he's black, right? And Max gave a breakdown of that on his channel. In that interview, he was to me, it seems as if they think that we're these mules. We're not people. We don't have a need for affection. We don't have a need for human warmth. We don't, our biological clocks don't tick like everybody's. We're just supposed to be these sexless soldiers for the cause. That's unrealistic. Now, we know what has to be done for the collective, but if you want to fix that collective rule that everybody abides by for the collective good, then black males need to fix their behavior and stop pointing the finger at black females. Stop that. It's an upside down standard because you have choices. You have lots of choices amongst black women. And for those of you who want to say, well, black women have choices too, all they have to do is just go find some black man outside of America. Come on now. That's unrealistic. You know how few people of any race have a passport? Do you know how few black people have passports? And you know why? Because the logistics of our lives under this system make it so difficult for us to get enough money to get a plane ticket to go anywhere long enough to meet anybody, to have a relationship with them. And not only that, you're just less likely to have a love connection with somebody that doesn't speak your language the way that you do. But more than anything else, it's just a hard thing to do. You're actually expecting these large numbers of black women who never marry, who have a net worth of $5, to somehow get up enough money to go and travel widely so they can find their black prince outside of the United States. Don't be silly. And yeah, don't be silly, because if that's true, well, I don't even want to go any further with that. It's an upside down standard. What time is it now? Okay, so I've got about 30 more minutes. That's the swirling thing. Now, I was asked by 2 subscribers, one by the name of Brooklyn Bridge, and one by the name of Cushite Prince, who's an old friend, actually. He's an old online friend, to rate some people. And so I want to, if I can do that. Now, this time, however, I wanted to do it with people. I didn't want to do it in advance. I was just going to show you. I was just going to do a screen capture so you can see it being done. But I thought I actually wanted to do it with the phone lines up. I actually do have my phone lines ready to go. But I've only got about 30 more minutes before I have to end the live stream. So what I wanted to do was have the phone lines up, have people call in, and we would go feature by feature with these people and rate them. What this is here now that you're seeing are peoples with various degrees of black ancestry. Some people want to go by the one drop rule and say all of them are black. That's what that would mean. That would mean that little blonde boy sitting on Blake Griffin's lap is black because, of course, Blake Griffin is considered black because, of course, his parent was considered black. This is why we're saying parentage cannot be used. But I just wanted to show, it's very short. It's not long. This is a little slideshow of the whole range of the way people can look. They can look. You can have a black parent and a non-black parent. And I'm talking about a genuinely phenotypically Cree tool 195 plus black person, get with a non-black person and produce a hybrid that doesn't look black, can produce a non-black person. That's the greatest likelihood, about a little over 50%, 50-60%. But sometimes they will look black, and sometimes they'll look white. Why do I have Nipsey Hussle in here? Well, because I don't consider his mother to have been a black woman, but I'm not rating her today. I don't consider his father to have been a black man, but I'm not disregarding the guy that's next to him that is accused of actually committing the murder. But yeah, I don't consider Nipsey Hussle a black person, but when we get on the phone lines and we get to the scoring sheet, you may disagree. Some of you may recognize this picture. This is sort of a well-known novelist and essayist and sort of political activist who says her roots are in Sudan, that her mother, however, was an Oromo from Ethiopia, and that she says that she was not just blue-black, she says that she was black like charcoal. And her father was a white Arab, she says. So this is Cola Booth. I would definitely rate her as a black person. I think most people would. This I used a long time ago. I don't know why Nipsey's still. What is this back here? Okay, whatever. I used this a long time ago in my Blog Talk Radio broadcast, and I paired it with my blog. But this is a pic of a family. The father, as you can see, he might be borderline himself. But the idea is to be able, and the mother is this unambiguously pink Euro, okay? The idea is to be able to see how genetics work. It's how the genetics of phenotype, when we're talking about the characteristics that we associate with race, work. It is not a matter of dominant and recessive. That's not how it works. It's called additive genetics. There's another term for it that I usually use. But it's polygenic inheritance. So there are several genes. They don't know how many. The minimum is 3. I'm quite sure it's not 3. So it's probably somewhere between 6 and 24 genes that code for skin color. And each parent has a version of that gene, an allele, and one allele might be absent for color, and one might have color. But each parent has got these, say, 12 genes. And it's a matter of probability. It's pure random chance how they combine. Now, because of probability, the greatest probability is that the offspring will be in between in skin shade. The same goes with hair coil. It's an additive thing. There are several genes, and it's just about how they combine. The same goes for nose shape, nose width, lip shape, even eye color. It's determined by additive genetics or polygenic inheritance, not simple dominant recessive. And so you can have that whole range. So if you look at this picture here, you see the extreme of the mother, the extreme of the father, and everything in between. You see a white child. You see a child that looks like her father. You see a child that looks like his mother, a child that looks like his father, and a child that's kind of in between. And this doesn't happen with every single family. But as you know, with flipping coins, if you might flip a coin and get head 10 times in a row, but it will regress to the mean. Eventually, it's just like watching a basketball game where this fantastic shooter like Stephen Curry, my God, he has a game, he maybe has 5 games where he just can't hit anything. But Stephen Curry shoots at whatever percentage he shoots at, and he will regress the mean. Just give him enough games and he'll get back to his average. So you might not see this probability played out in one particular family, but if you look at enough families, you're going to see that about 25% are closer to the darker parent or the more Africoid or the more Negroid looking parent. About 25% are closer to the non-black parent, and 50% are in between. And the further away from the middle, meaning the more like one particular parent, whether the black parent or the non-black parent, the more that the child looks like that parent, the less of a chance of that happening. But it does happen. And that's why it is possible to have a non-black parent and a white parent, a non-black parent and black parent, a non-black parent and a black parent, and have a child that is black, because you can get one that just looks closer to black, close enough to meet that 68% similarity. It just happens. It's not what happens most of the time, but it happens. If we're talking about the 68% similarity, about 15 to 20% of the time. Do I have another one here? I showed this woman before. This is Jones. She looks white. She doesn't look like her father. Kidada Jones, the other sister who was, I think, dating Tupac for a while. She looks more like a hybrid. She looks more like a little less black than Halle Berry, but quite a bit different than Rashida. I can't tell you the name of this woman. I know her name, but I worked with her. I don't think very many people, on the Cree tool she would score black, and I don't think very many people would say that she's not black. But I knew her personally. I worked with her for 3 years. And she had siblings. And she had a black mother and a white father. But she was a black person. It happens. But here's Wentworth Miller, exact opposite. He looks white. Black parent. I don't know how black his father is. White mother. Lenny Kravitz, light-skinned. Got some issues with the nose there, but he would score black. Roxy Roker from the Jeffersons was his mother, and he has a white Jewish father, Cy Kravitz or something like that. It can just happen. The whole range can happen. The greatest likelihood is that they're going to be in the middle, which makes them not black. That's not black. That 50%, those hybrids, they're neither white nor black, but they're not black. Then that 25% that looks more like the non-black parent, they're not black. 75%. So you got about 20% chance of them being black. But it can happen. There are people, who want to debate me on that. I've got all these pictures of Nipsey Hussle showing, but I'm trying to close him out because I don't want to rate him right now. I'm going to come back for part 2, and we'll do that together with the phone lines. I've got that working. I've tested it out. So we'll do that with the phone lines. And I'll be able to rate all the people that Cushite Prince and Brooklyn Bridge wanted me to rate. Brooklyn Bridge wants me to rate Van Diesel, or he wants us to rate Vin Diesel and Aaliyah. And Cushite Prince, a longtime online friend, he used to always give me all kinds of props for my blog. Cushite Prince wants to have Bob Marley and Maya rated, and I want to rate Nipsey Russell, and like I said, major props to the YouTuber, the black female called on her channel is called Successful Ladies Live, because she just went right ahead and did it, and it was very I don't think I've seen a video like that where the amount of thumbs up were equal to the amount of thumbs down. I think at the time that I saw it, she had 3,000 thumbs up and 3,000 thumbs down. But she did it ahead of me, and I think she did it respectfully. But it took quite a bit of courage, and I do want to applaud her for that. Okay, so because of time constraints that I have today, I know I came on early because I know I'm supposed to come on at 6 p.m., but you know how things happen. I don't do this for a living, and that was never my intent. So I do have some other commitments that I have to get to. So I'm going to have to close this one out early for today, and then I'll come back tomorrow and we'll do some rating, and then people can call in and as long as they're courteous, you don't have to agree with me, and you can give your opinions. I much prefer to deal with people's. It's just easier to deal with them on the spot, to talk to a person, than it is to be responding to comments. For me, at least at this point, it is. It's very time intensive to do it, to always be attending to the comments. And like I said, I'm not always aware when somebody has commented. I don't always get a notification. Maybe it's the way I've set it up, and I need to change that. But that's a long-winded way of saying that for Friday, April 19th, 2019, this has been the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer Program, talking about a lot of things, talking about swirling and AIOS and ADOS and fallacious logic and COINTELPRO and agents. It's probably the most long-winded summation I've ever done. Okay, but at this point I have to go. So stay safe for now, and hopefully I'll talk to you all tomorrow. Signing out.